Good morning, everyone. So basically, I invested money in games my whole life. During the school times, I played card games to finance my living style, but I even turned it into my profession. So maybe a few words about me. I founded Gameforge in 2003, built it to around 550 employees and 150 million yearly revenue in around 5 years. 2 years later, I realized that the company grew too big for me. So I went out again, did a few investments in gaming companies, among a few other industries that I was interested in, and then turned around and built Flare Games. What is Flare Games? Flare Games is a mobile games publisher and developer. And it's laid over. That's funny. Whatever. We do mid-core mobile games, free-to-play only, on Android, iOS, as well as the Windows devices. We do have 2 studios, one in Karlsruhe, one is based in Frankfurt. Around 105 employees are around for 2.5 years right now. Our biggest hit so far was Royal Revolt 2, published around a year ago. Received very high critics from both the platforms as well as the users. Around 12 million downloads nowadays, and one of the titles that we are particularly proud of. In the upcoming year, we have 6 titles coming out in our pipeline. Most of them not announced yet, but all of them have a bigger budget than Royal Revolt and a production quality that is at least at that level. This is a nice view on our pay show where we have like parts of our team. That's our publishing and studio in Karlsruhe. So, betting money on games. Betting, the word, it is a little bit exaggerated because, I mean, obviously you can flip around with the odds, but in the end, if you say, hey, I know I want to bet money on this game because I know it's really going to turn out a huge hit, it's the same as betting on a football game or betting on a horse race. You can have this infinite wisdom that this game will turn out, but in the end you can just twiddle around with the odds. You can't really predict which game will be a huge success. What you can do is pick games that are likely to be a success. To make this point, let's flip to the famous decisions that I made. Well, the 2 ones that stand out the most. In my infinite wisdom, during the times when I was still CEO of Gameforge, I turned down the publishing rights of a small game turned World of Tanks. Clearly a very wise and very smart decision, and stupid at the same time. I will come back to that later. And another one of my most standing out decisions was an investment in a small Finnish games company that didn't have a successful game back at that time, but turned out to produce a game that's called Clash of Clans. You might have heard about it. Let me explain why both decisions kind of reflect my philosophy and my rule set of investing in games, both in terms of professional capacity when I run games companies, as well as when I'm around as a private investor. And those 2 decisions, because nobody knows about the World of Tanks stuff, but some people know about the Clash of Clans stuff, lead me to the one investor secret that most people use, and I don't tend to. Tell everybody about the stuff that worked and be silent about the rest of it. Then you seem smart. Let's look at my rules for investing in games. So, I privately may bet on your money, your money on your company or your game when, first of all, I believe you are honest with me. I don't like to work with people who exaggerate, who sell other people's work as theirs, who sell other people's ideas as theirs, or that are, quite frankly, assholes. Life is far too short to spend your time with people you don't like working with. So be honest with me and with yourself and with your team, and we have something to talk about. I'm not in the business of discovering diamonds in the rough. That's far too risky. My talents are in scaling things that have potential. So you should have proven yourself in what you've done. You should have built a game that is at least great, not necessarily successful, but great, with the potential that is there to be tapped, where you can clearly see there is something you can build on and work on. I might invest money when I feel you are really into games. Talking to non-gamers is more a necessity and an evil thing when you're around in games company. You have to employ a lawyer, obviously. You have to work with business people, obviously. But I don't talk about games with people who don't like games. It's quite frankly a waste of time. I'm a gamer my whole life, and they won't get how I think, and they won't get how I feel about games. Actually, I came into this business, made it my job by creating a browser game with my friends as part of a bet that I can do it myself, and failed my studies because of it. And if you're a suit running a games company, I'm probably not the right partner for you. And last but not least, when I worked with, as an investor with a games company, I should understand your venture. I don't know everything, I cannot, and I will never. And I have people that I can ask about a lot of stuff, but I would rather skip opportunities than investing in something that feels like strange. I want to understand, and I want to be able to kind of create value by applying my expertise in your game and in scaling the company. And if I can't, I simply, it's not worth the time. These were kind of the personal criteria. Now let's tap a little bit into how Flair Games chooses games. I mentioned before, we are a developer ourselves and are a developer by heart and started as a developer only. When we realized that we had built out some infrastructure that enabled us to deliver something of value to other developers, so things they are desperately looking for. Expertise in monetization, publishing infrastructure from a technological perspective, as well as team-wise. So we have all these things, plug and play. Basically, we deliver a great plug you can put into your game, and then it's ready to publish on our custom-built, in-house built publishing platform. That, of course, implies a lot of external things as well. Games for Flair Games, whether they are internal or external. Some examples for the external studios we are working with is, for example, Remedy, based in Finland, Subatomic, the guys who build Field Runners. We are building a great game in the Field Runners universe with them that will hopefully be out later this year, early next, we'll see. So, how Flair Games chooses games? We look for games that are free to play, only, purely. Your game might be brilliant, we only do free to play. If it is a paid game, we won't take it. Paid games are hard to market and hard to scale. It's hard to do real great marketing for them. The numbers are just different by a magnitude. And it doesn't really make sense to invest our time and resources in everything that's free to play, especially because most of our expertise is in scaling and building free to play games and marketing them. So paid games are nothing for us. Next one, we only do multiplayer games. Preferable competitive, even more preferable cooperative competitive. People spend more money in multiplayer games, people spend more time in multiplayer games, people have a higher retention in multiplayer games, and multiplayer games have a higher virality than single-player games. All of them are great reasons to spend your money on multiplayer games because they increase the lifetime value of a user, and those in turn increases the return on investment on marketing campaigns that you run. We only do asynchronous games. With one exception, but that's more a field trial. Asynchronous games versus synchronous games is a huge discussion, obviously. We heard the talk about short session times just before mine, and basically the way people play games, especially on mobile devices, completely changed over the last years. Whether on console or PC, you were kind of putting your life around the time where you played, like sitting down really playing 3 hours straight and then getting up and making yourself something to eat. especially on mobile devices, it's the other way around. You kind of grab your mobile phone, play like 3 to 5, maybe 10 minutes when you just have time, waiting for a bus, waiting for a call, waiting for your wife, waiting for your kids, whatever. And you have to be able to do something meaningful in this time. If you are still in a session or completing something in the game together with other people and have to drop out because real life requires your attention, it creates a bad gaming experience for you. It creates a bad gaming experience for everything you are playing with or against at that moment, because basically you ruin their experiences as well. So we only look at asynchronous games, and which makes matchmaking much easier too. We only do mid-core games, and I mean, it's a huge buzzword, of course, and I apologize for that. We would define mid-core, and that's the way we approach it, as a game that is intriguing to two types of players. First of all, the casual plus audience, the people who played like Farmville and Candy Crush and all this stuff, and now they are looking for something a little bit more challenging, a little bit more deep, a little bit more strategical maybe. Those is the smaller kind of our audience, and the bigger part is, yeah, the core minus users. So the ones that are hardcore gamers by heart, were hardcore gamers and really love deep strategy games, multiplayer, clan action, alliance action, stuff like that, but they have less time left. So they play on their mobile device. The great thing is that most people that work in our companies, as well as most of the other gaming companies in the world, probably are this core minus audience. They have a job now, and they have a family, and they have kids, and they have a console at home, but it has dust on it, and they didn't turn it on for quite some time. But they switch to mobile devices and spend a lot of time there. The great advantage is that you pretty well understand what those people find interesting, what they love, what they spend their time and their money on. So this is the kind of core audience we are trying to attract. We only do role-playing games or strategy games, or adjacent genres. Main reason for that is both genres have proven themselves in free-to-play. We are in a business, and we want to do games in genres that have proven monetization mechanics that we can elaborate and iterate on. And obviously, we have a lot of people who love role-playing games and strategy games in our company and in our friends, and one of them is me. So I'm a big fan of those genres as well. The player should be able to build something of value over time. This might be a town, a character. This can be basically everything. But when the player invests time in this object or thing, it should grow bigger, more powerful, more unique, whatever. The player should identify himself with that. And that brings two great advantages. A sense for his time that he spends there. So spending more time is always a great option. And on the other hand, a pain of loss if the object of his choice suffers. So if the hero gets beaten, this is something that will get him back in the game. If the town gets burned, it will get him back in the game. It's a great retention increaser. We love cliches. Terry Pratchett once said, cliches are the hammer and nails in the toolbox of communication. And it's pretty true. If you use cliches and refer to cliche genres and settings, you don't have to explain anything. You know, I say fantasy, and you of course have like, oh, the elves are tall and have a bow, and the dwarf has a beard and an axe, and there is a dragon there, and he hoards gold, and there is probably a maiden there, and the night will come around. It's all something I don't have to explain at all, and there are like 15, 20 settings like this that you can tap into the basic knowledge that every human being has without having to explain anything. It appeals to the masses, and you can just focus on creating a game and not explaining what it's actually about. We are looking for games that have editor's choice quality. This doesn't necessarily have to be like 3D graphics, stunning effects and everything, but when you just briefly skip through the editor's choices of the big platforms, you get a feeling of what they are looking for. And this is something which we are trying to reproduce. So far, all of our games have been heavily featured by all the platforms, and this is because we exactly cater to their needs. They have to be good enough to stand out. Right now, a few thousand games are released on all the platforms together, and you have to be like in the top percentile to be recognized at all, which increases your chance of successfully marketing the game as well. So it will increase your return on your marketing dollars. This is kind of the underlying rule set for the games. Now let's focus on the studios we are trying to work with, because obviously we have some needs for them as well. So first of all, we want the studio to embrace free-to-play. There are a lot of studios out there who know they have to do free-to-play, but they don't really love it, and they don't really want to do it, and they don't really recognize what is needed to successfully to successfully apply free-to-play mechanics to a great game, because it changes the game back to the roots. The free-to-play design and the monetization design has been factored in deeply, deeply into the DNA and the basic roots of the game. And yeah, as the slide says, it's more than a shop button. We are looking for studios that have a proven genre expertise. So if we are building a role-playing game, the studio should have done a role-playing game before. It just makes things easier. We start talking on the same level, and they need to love and understand their genre, so we can really apply our knowledge and we are able to deliver a great game together. The studio has to be a proven deliverer, so they should have a proven track record of meeting time, budget, and quality. Then it's easy to do the leap of faith to finance the whole development even, and enable the studio to do a great game together with us. Now the nice to have. The mobile expertise would be nice to have, but most studios either don't have it, or if they have it, don't need or want to work with us, which is fine. It's a big plus. An existing brand is a big plus as well. So for example, and the Subatomic example is a good one for that. The guys are pretty successful with their Field Runners brand, right? They had like, I don't know, 50 million downloads or so combined with Field Runners 1 and 2, and there wasn't even an iPad back when they published. They published on the first iPhone. So huge brand. They have an audience that obviously has huge expectations for the next one that we will be able to hopefully tap into. So it's a huge plus that they have the brand and decided to kind of take the leap of faith to use their brand and to do a free-to-play game based on that together with us to deliver something that is great for people who don't know the brand as well as for old fans and their existing audience. And this goes in the same direction. If the studio has a user base already that we can tap into, obviously the chances of success are awesome. But we are already in the dream world right now because there are like a handful of studios only that have that. Let's look at it from two other examples that we are both building internally and externally, and how we looked into that. So, three games actually, sorry. Roll Revolt 2 is the one game that we developed internally. Beautiful tower offense game, 3D setting, works internationally. Actually, the biggest audience that we have is in Bangkok. For whatever reason, we didn't tailor the game for that. But it checks all the boxes. It's free to play, it's multiplayer, it's asynchronous, it's midcore. It taps all the boxes of our internal criteria. Another game that we just licensed and didn't fully announce yet, but that we are working on and that will be hopefully out this summer, is Dawn of Steel, a game built by the ex-Command & Conquer team. It's free to play, it's midcore, it's asynchronous. It's not editor's choice yet, but it's not out yet. The quality is definitely there, so we are actually aiming for that. The studio is based in LA. And this is a great example that's not in our portfolio for good reason. It's Pearl's Peril, published by Vuga, and a huge success for them. So it really works out quite well for them. They just announced a game that is very, very similar in gameplay, Agent Alice, which I keep my fingers crossed for. But it's nothing that we would do. It's a great game, but it doesn't check our boxes. It is not multiplayer, it is not mid-core, it doesn't even target our audience like the typical mid-core player. This is more a game played by females 20 to 45, something like that. So it's totally possible that there are games out there, and that's the point to make, that don't check our boxes and are still very successful. They just won't be successful with us. So let's probably go back to my two decisions that stand out during the time. Clash of Clans is an obvious one. I mean, it checks all the boxes, but to my defense and those guys' pride, the game wasn't even there when I invested in the company. The guys Supercell just had failed with a core free-to-play game, but I saw something in the team that was pretty awesome. And luckily, it was a success afterwards, that it was one of those scale nobody would have ever known, because it's just something you can't predict. And when I look back at World of Tanks and Wargaming, when the studio approached us, it was some Russian studio that nobody had ever heard of, that have been doing single-player Second and First World War games for the last 10 years, all single-player, all box products, all not free to play, so they didn't have any expertise in multiplayer and matchmaking. The art style was very, very core, so we decided not to do it. Basically, it was pitched to us to a Counter-Strike with tanks, which it came down to and worked out quite well. But it was an unproven team. They didn't have the expertise that matched. And basically, this shows that despite all the learnings that you might have from your past, and despite all the rules you set up for yourself to increase the criteria or increase the chances of success with betting money on games, you might still be totally wrong, and you can have a huge hit, even if you follow your rules or you don't. So it's not about being smart, it's about picking the right people. Thank you.
Thank you, Klaas. Do we have any questions from the audience? All right.
I'm Christopher Levati from Games Industry Biz. Hi, Klaas. Klaas, thank you very much for your illuminating speech about your strategy. But there's, in the end, one question mark I have, which is about mid-core games. I'm not really sure how you would classify me personally, for example. Don't you think that a casual game is simply a game which is not deep enough to get all the players? Don't you think that in the future there won't be any more casual games, but the approach to games will be a higher one to get the casual gamers and the mid-core gamers and the hardcore gamers, so that you need a better gameplay depth in the future? Because I don't understand really how to define mid-core games. Is it me when I play 4 hours? Is it him? Or, you know, I can play World of Tanks 1 hour a week. I actually played maybe 20 hours a week.
You have too much time.
No, I'm dependent to that. But have you thought about that, how that categories will develop in the future?
I mean, the categories are obviously totally and fully artificial. As I said, mid-core is basically a buzzword, and you can't really use it to classify games fully. I guess in the end it's about looking at your target audience and see what kind of experiences they are looking for, what kind of behavior they have when they play. So how long will the sessions be, how many sessions do they have a day? And there is a behavior that I would classify as mid-core, and this is like 5 sessions, 10 minutes a day, something like that. They are longer, obviously, sometimes, and sometimes they are shorter. It's just that the games are not the center of the world of this audience anymore, as they are with a hardcore gamer. And if I hear you 20 hours of World of Tanks a week, it's probably more a hardcore gamer behavior than mid-core gamer behavior.
All right. More questions?
Hello, Klaus. Thank you. Do you have plans to changing your criteria in the future? For example, you say about asynchronous multiplayer, but maybe later, for example, if Hearthstone will be #1 top grossing game, maybe you will change to synchronous also.
I mean, not changing if the world changes is more stupid than anything else. So obviously rules are meant to be broken, and we are breaking them as we speak because we are working on one game that is actually synchronous in-house, because we had a great idea that might work with the synchronous games, with a synchronous game, and had some other great ideas how to mitigate the risks that derive from that in gameplay experience. We will see if it turns out. By taking the synchronous bet, it's probably the most risky project that we have internally, but it's an awesome game already, and the prototype is fun already, so we will see about it. But obviously, rules are made to be changed. They apply to the world as of today, and tomorrow they might all be bullshit.
We still have time for a couple of questions. All right, I actually have one.
Okay.
So there's quite many indie developers out here at Casual Connect, and they're presenting their games, maybe looking for investors or publishers, so on. From your perspective as being a publisher and an investor, what can they do right here, right now, to catch your attention?
Just approach me. That's what I'm here for. I mean, I'm here, talk to me, and let me have a look at your game, and if it's great, we can talk.
And if they don't know you? Because there's a lot of other investors maybe who are not speaking, so they can't put they can't recognize them.
Well,
anything you would advise them?
Work with people that like your game, and not with people who show you a check. That's the biggest advice, I guess. Otherwise, it just ends up as a mess.
All right, thank you. Last chance for a question. Don't be shy. All right, well, thank you so much, Klaas.
Thank you, guys.